We are biologically wired to look for danger in very specific packages. We scan for the tallest, the loudest, or the most heavily armored figures, assuming that is where the threat lies. But this creates a psychological blind spot. We frequently overlook anyone who fails to fit that rigid physical mold. When the people we ignore realize they are invisible, they gain a unique tactical advantage. Some choose to weaponize the oversight, engineering a comeback that dismantles the very assumptions that kept them hidden in the first place. In 1943, Maria Oktyabrskaya was a grieving widow living in the deep interior of the Soviet Union. Her husband had been killed defending Kiev against the German invasion 2 years earlier. To the authorities, she was one of millions of displaced civilians quietly mourning a private loss. Jeffrey Hudson occupied a similarly narrow space in 17th century England. He was 19 inches tall, a reality that saw him categorized as a curated curiosity for the aristocracy. He was traded among nobles and kept as a living prop, used primarily to provide comedic relief at royal banquets. No one in the Soviet military or the English court viewed these individuals as capable of real-world impact. Yet both would go on to launch two of the most unexpected revenge tours on record, precisely because their enemies lacked the imagination to see them as a threat. Maria responded to the news of her husband's death by selling every possession she owned. She took that money directly to the Red Army and personally funded the production of a T-34 tank. She presented the Soviet government with a single, non-negotiable demand. When the machine was finished, she would be the one to drive it into the path of the German army. The State Defense Committee agreed, but her male crew remained deeply skeptical. They looked at the middle-aged widow who had painted "fighting girlfriend" on her turret and assumed her presence was a harmless PR stunt designed to boost civilian morale. During her first battle near Smolensk, Maria systematically destroyed a string of German machine gun nests and artillery positions. Her performance on the battlefield immediately surpassed the expectations of her commanders. The situation turned critical when an enemy shell struck the fighting girlfriend, disabling its treads and trapping the crew in an active kill zone. Maria disregarded orders to stay under armor. She leapt out of the hatch into heavy crossfire, manually repaired the tracks, and drove her crew to safety while the battle raged around them. This act of technical skill and physical bravery ended the skepticism of her crew. She was immediately promoted to sergeant, earning the genuine respect of the men she led. Maria possessed a lethal advantage that no armor plate could provide. Her enemies, and even her own army, failed to imagine a grieving widow as a serious force of violence. Jeffrey Hudson's battlefield was the English court. Despite an elite education, he was treated as a living prop without agency. Court entertainment relied on his humiliation, famously baking him into a pie and carrying him in a giant's pocket as a visual joke. Following the English Civil War, Jeffrey was exiled to France. He had served as a captain of the horse during the conflict and decided that his life as a punchline was over. He began enforcing a zero-tolerance policy for mockery, challenging anyone who insulted him to a duel. Charles Crofts, a member of the court, treated the challenge as another joke. He arrived at the dueling grounds on horseback, but instead of a pistol, he mockingly brandished a wooden squirt gun. The gathered crowd laughed, expecting the usual comedy routine. Jeffrey remained silent. He refused to acknowledge the joke and demanded that Crofts be handed real, loaded weapons. The signal was given. Crofts fired first, but his shot went wide, missing Jeffrey's small physical frame. Jeffrey raised his custom pistol, took aim, and shot Crofts dead center in the forehead. The laughter from the spectators stopped instantly. Crofts died because his absolute certainty that Jeffrey was a joke left him unprepared. He had spent so long laughing at the underdog that he forgot he was facing a man with a gun. For Maria and Jeffrey, being taken seriously came with a heavy personal price. Their choices set off chains of events ending far from the battlefield and the royal court. In early 1944, Maria's tank treads were disabled once again during a night battle. While attempting another heroic repair under fire, she was struck in the head by shell fragments. She fell into a coma and passed away 2 months later. Jeffrey's victory led to immediate exile for murder. Soon after, he was captured by Barbary pirates and spent 25 years in North African slavery. He eventually returned to England, only to die penniless in a London prison. Yet they achieved their specific goals. Maria's name became a legend in the Red Army, and she was posthumously named a hero of the Soviet Union. Jeffrey Hudson had finally forced the world to acknowledge that he was not a toy. These stories serve as a reminder of the danger of dismissing others. When an individual is relegated to a punchline and stripped of their dignity, they may decide that the only way to be heard is through an act so loud that it can no longer be ignored.